Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Ross, and I'm a marriage family therapist here at Sasko River Center. And this morning, we're going to be talking to you about thriving during the holidays, perspectives on family traditions during stress-filled moments.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jo Briggs, one of Carrie's colleagues at SASCO, and we're thrilled to have you here with us this morning. If you have questions as we're going through the presentation or something comes to mind, please just pop it in the chat and we will do our best to answer your questions or respond via email afterwards.
All right, let's get going. So we're going to talk to you about three major points this morning. The first being, you could just all the stressors that we face during the holiday season. There are many, and we'll go through them and talk about what they are. And the next point, Jo, give you tips and strategies to face these challenges with more ease, which we're all looking for during this time of year. And the third topic is that we will highlight why rest and leisure is so important to create more meaningful family time. So holiday stressors, we all face them this time of year. And, stress can be physical. It can manifest physically where we get headaches, sleep disturbances, feel exhausted, difficulty concentrating. And stress can also manifest emotionally where we feel heightened fear or heightened frustration or heightened sadness or anger. And these can come due to many things, and we've highlighted some here. One is family relationships. For sure, this time of year, you're seeing people that you don't see all year long, perhaps, and there might be dynamics that have some conflict or old patterns that are unhealthy. Another holiday stressor is the consumerism. I know I've been getting Black Friday texts and Cyber Monday texts and all of the advertising hype, which, raises my stress level. I know that, and feels like, oh, I should be buying and I should be out there, and all the shoulds and pressures of consumerism, which then can cause financial strain of what do I spend and how much do I spend and who do I buy for and how much have I saved for this time of year. So there's added pressure and stress in that category as well. Many of us face grief and loss during this time of year, which is really, really tough. And grief and loss can be heightened during the holidays as you're moving into celebrations, and perhaps people that you love are no longer with you. And that can be really stressful. Another holiday stressor is noise and crowds. People don't like being in loud places or going to that tree lighting where there's a lot of crowds. And that's just an added element of this time of year, how to navigate all of that. Another stressor is just unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves. Perhaps things will be better with that cousin this year at the holiday party. Or, I didn't really like this thing from last year, and so I'm going to make it better and different and bigger and this year. And sometimes those expectations just create disappointment or added stress because it doesn't turn out that way. And lastly, but certainly not least, a packed schedule, right? There are so many things that we could be doing, could be putting on our calendar this time of year, and really taking a look at what boundaries we want to put in place, what we really want to put on our calendar in order to minimize the stress, because we know that that packed calendar adds stress.
Thanks, Carrie. So we're going to break down some of these stresses into 7 discrete challenges that we see people frequently facing over the holidays, more defined than those opening points. And the first is balancing the needs of nuclear versus extended family, meaning your, husband, partner, spouse, and your immediate children versus your parents and extended family. And we see holidays creating a tension between honoring the needs and priorities of your immediate family while also meeting the expectations of extended family. There's this tension between, do I still follow my extended family's traditions and needs and expectations, or do I prioritize that of my immediate family? And while the holiday traditions you cherish today likely didn't appear out of nowhere, at some point your parents created those traditions and made deliberate decisions about how to shape the holidays to reflect their family's unique values and needs. And they took the lead, letting go of their parents' traditions. And those are now the foundations of your treasured memories. But now it's your turn. And how do you create space for your nuclear family to decide how to celebrate and not feel guilty about not following the needs of, the extended family exclusively? So, some practical tips here include communicating early with your family, telling them and really acknowledging that, we so appreciate your traditions or that you want us to do X, Y, and Z, but we really need to prioritize, our kids at this time of year or whatever that is for you. And setting those boundaries respectfully. So, expressing appreciation for all that they've done in the past, but, offering to take the lead now. And in that event, often hosting is preferable. I know that puts more pressure on the system, but it allows you to blend your family traditions while maintaining control over your own needs and creating new traditions that align with your values, but may also involve extended families. I guess our number one thing here is to stay focused on your priorities and let go of the guilt, and just focus on connection and finding balance.
Another stressor that we face this time of year is the intensity of and duration of holiday gatherings, which can bring up old conflicts and disagreements, and that can create more stress. So even families that are close can have snags this time of year. And another challenge within this too much family time is that when young adults come home or teens that have had a lot of independence, they may struggle with adjusting to the family life or the family time that is now put upon them during the holiday season. So some practical tips for too much family time is, number one, you really want to set appropriate boundaries and give yourself that permission to really know what's going to work for you and what you want to decline. And one way I like to think about this is not just saying no, but maybe saying, no, not right now, or I'm sorry, I can't do this, but I can do that. So you can really, once you get clear on what your own boundaries are, you're able to come to your family and say, I can spend the morning with you, but then I'm going to take the afternoon and go see a friend or go for a walk. And that's really healthy and important when all of a sudden you're in the midst of lots of family time during the holidays. With that, as I said, normalizing breaks. And, if you set the tone for the family, oh, I'm going to go and take a walk this afternoon, you really allow others to do the same for themselves. So not only are you setting a boundary for yourself, but you could be modeling for your kids and for other extended family that have come around this time of year. Embrace the strategy of underreactivity. I really love this and wanted to share in that almost as though you're at a family gathering and you are looking at your family like the interactions are unfolding and you're like getting curious and almost like a researcher of what's happening. So you're not reacting and getting enmeshed in the family drama, but you're sort of on the outside looking in this very underreactive state, so that you can step back and take perspective and maybe realize what's unfolding, a heated conversation about politics, but maybe you don't want to get involved in that moment. So you can take that underreactivity strategy. Also, practicing acceptance is something that is really important, because we can kind of sit in, oh, I wish this was different. I wish that person would act this way. But the reality is, if we practice the acceptance of this is the way it is, and there probably are some gifts that that person brings to your family, and looking at at changing your mindset around you are around and how you can see them with some value versus what you wish would be different, is a great reframe for yourself during this time of year. We want to respect the independence for teens and young adults. As teens and young adults are growing and then family time happens, there actually can be an age regression that comes when they come home and they return to their family of origin for those young adults that are coming home, or even teens that, grandparents come or cousins come, there can be an age regression. So we want to be conscious that this is a part of large family gatherings and lots of family time, and respect that. That goes back to the boundaries, giving them breaks, letting them go off and see a friend or do something that's going to nourish them and make them feel good during this time of year as well. And then lastly, balancing the generational wants and needs. If you have grandparents and young kids in one space, how do you balance that? Well, again, boundaries. We're going to go out and take the kids to the park, and grandma, you can stay here and relax. But then also bringing those generations together, doing puzzles, telling stories, playing games, so that, you're really bringing the family together and enjoying that time, and also navigating what everybody wants and needs.
So, adapting to new family dynamics. And this is both where we have divorces or kids leaving home, maybe additions to the family. Somebody in the family had a baby, somebody passed away. What's happening within the family dynamics that changes things and makes it less comfortable for us? And these can be small things and they can be big things. And I was actually reminded of something. A client came in the other day and they were like, my kids don't want to go to Maple Road to cut down that tree this year. And I remember going through that change a couple of years ago with my kids. We'd been there since 2002 under the iconic sign, that state of the year. And we all sat there and took the annual family photograph. And suddenly my kids didn't want to go anymore when they were in their late teens. It was a hassle. It didn't feel great for them. And suddenly I had to come up with this whole new tradition, just as my client was expressing in session, about finding a way to get a tree and to make that feel special, and to where do we take the family photograph now? And sometimes we long for the way things were and we get so tied to traditions, but we need to see these changes in family dynamics, whether it's just, developmental life cycle, kids getting older, or, bigger changes, as opportunities for growth, and try and foster a sense of belonging if they're new additions to the family, a new brother-in-law. Look at it from their perspective and try and understand. And I think the biggest transition for many in adapting to new family dynamics is divorce or separation, where now you're really starting from scratch because old traditions seem to just remind us of what's been lost or left behind, and we don't yet have a new way forward. So how do we navigate this? We remind ourselves that the only constant in life is change. That is the given. And we've got to give ourselves grace for feelings of loss or longing for the way things that were, and understand that that's a perfectly normal reaction. And acknowledging those changes and acknowledging that we feel sad that things are changing helps us move forward in that process. Stepping into somebody else's shoes and trying to imagine what it's like from their perspective to experience these changes. If there's a new family member or someone's just gotten divorced, what's it like for them to come to a family gathering by themselves for the first time? Or for kids going through divorce, what's it like for them to be, in two different households or celebrating in two different ways, and communicating with them about what they'd like and what feels right for them. And then lastly on this, I think prioritizing key traditions. We try and do so many different things and have so many things that we keep constant, but sometimes just picking two or three things. If you think back on your own uh, experience of the holidays growing up, typically we can identify maybe two or three things that really resonated with us. And I think it's honing in on those things or creating 2 or 3 new things that you can take going forward if the dynamics are shifting is really the way to stay streamlined and feel like you're on task and not overwhelmed.
The fourth challenge we want to talk about is navigating grief and loss during this time of year. And really the lead up to the holiday can be more anxiety provoking than the actual holiday, the actual day. And so for yourself and for kids, it's really great to plan ahead. That can lower anxiety, and you can come together as a family to share your decisions about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And I just want to name that, not only is it about the grief of losing a loved one, but it could be anticipatory grief of somebody who is sick and things have changed. And so this holiday is going to be different than the last, or a loss of a relationship that maybe has changed over the year or the years. So it doesn't have to just be the death of somebody that you love, but it could also be other ways where we're grieving and feeling loss. And because this is a time of year where really we all feel like there's pressure to do so much, that it's important to be kind to yourself and to realize that you don't have to do it all, and things may be different before you became bereft. Also, grief doesn't have a timeline. It's really not linear. And so you could be experiencing big waves of grief, small waves of grief, and to just accept what comes and not judge it, and know that this time of year is hard, and that this sadness also coexists with joy, that it can be, sort of a both sides of the coin. So tips to navigate grief and loss. As I said before, planning ahead is really important. It is very important for you. It's also very important for children. They want to know what's coming. And there's another tip in here about making sure, celebrating different feelings and preferences, which I'll just address now, is that when you are planning ahead, to talk to your kids about what they want to do, how they want to honor the person that has passed, and really celebrating their feelings about it will make the holiday season feel smoother and collaborative with your family. I addressed it a bit, but there are no shoulds, right? You can give yourself permission to do the things you want to do. You don't have to go to that party. You don't have to, do that event where you're going to feel uncomfortable, or you're worried you might feel uncomfortable. Sit that one out. It's okay. And this year might look different than next year. It's not a constant. Like Joe said, things change all the time. So this year you may be feeling like you can only do 2 of these events, and that's all right. And next year it might be 3. So just really being gentle with yourself, I think, is very important if you're grieving during this time of year. Celebrating, I talked about celebrating different feelings and preferences. Asking for help. Asking for help is so hard for many of us, but when you're grieving, it's actually something that people really want to do. Most of the time, when you ask for help, in many capacities, people are willing and able to support you. So that might look like asking them to help you clean, or to help you cook, or maybe to watch your kids while you go run an errand or take a nap. Sometimes we worry that we're burdening others, but really people are more willing to help than we give anybody credit for. And we know that if they asked us, we would say yes. So let's take the risk and ask for help. Finding time to rest when you're grieving is very important. When we're in grief, we actually need more sleep and more rest for our body to be restored. So I know it's hard this time of year to find time to rest, but we need to carve out that time, and we'll talk about rest in a little bit. If you're home with your kids, encourage some quiet playtime, downtime, healthy eating, drinking plenty of water. Just being really good to your body and mind is a way that you can rest during this emotionally and physically draining time of year. And lastly, we want to find ways to remember and honor the person that has passed. Some ways and ideas that I liked that I wanted to share is light a memorial candle, invite friends and family to share memories of that person. You can write a card or letter to the person who has died. You can write memories on strips of paper and make them into those holiday chains and hang them in your dining room or your playroom. Or you can buy a gift for that person that you've lost and donate it to a important charity.
Carrie, those are such great ideas. I just want to highlight, as a mother of children who lost their dad 6 years ago, that it's funny. I used to celebrate, I used to light a candle over the holidays and do this like more somber, like remembrance. And I realized it wasn't really resonating with my kids. And so I asked them what they want. And they actually picked to find the funniest videos of their dad and watch it on a loop for like half an hour and just remember the good times. So it just speaks to the importance of checking in with the people and remembering that even if someone passed many years ago, we still want to keep their memory alive and keep them included. So like a fun photo reel or video reel can be another great way to remember somebody who's not with us anymore.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
So on to challenge number 5, and this feels a bit stressful even talking about, but it's how to balance festivities with academic and work demands. We sort of, get caught up in the stress of the holidays and sometimes don't realize that particularly our kids can be dealing with exams coming up right after the holidays. Why schools do that, I'm still a little surprised by. End of term projects, college applications, right? Maybe your high schooler just got deferred or rejected from their early decision and now they're scrambling to do the supplements to make more applications, or they're really, their mind is not necessarily on celebrating the holidays fully. Or you or your spouse may be dealing with increased workloads at the end of the year. A lot of people have deadlines that coincide with the end of the calendar year. And what do we do about that? So there's this clash of expectations and the conflicts people are experiencing to meet all these obligations. So what do? We've got to acknowledge, again, back to points made earlier, just acknowledging what people are experiencing, saying to your teen, I know you've got exams right after the holidays. Do you want me to help you carve out time for studying? Do you want me to, if you've got family visiting, maybe there's no quiet space for them to go to, you know, if they suddenly disappear, we get irritated with them. You're supposed to be hanging out with us here. And maybe that's when they're choosing to study. And how do we appreciate that and give them space for that and validate their feelings that they may be a little resentful that everybody else is in downtime mode and they're still having to worry about these commitments that are coming up right after the holidays. So just allow teens to express when they need less involvement in the family plans and block out dedicated time for rest and relaxation. Maybe say to them, for 3 days you're doing absolutely nothing, we're not worrying about everything, and then we'll get back to it. Or ask them what feels good in that regard. And if you have year-end deadlines, communicate that to your family. Let them know, I've got a big deadline coming up, because often we think that that's going to impose an additional burden, but if we share it, it just creates understanding and empathy that allows us to do things with less guilt.
Okay. Navigating gift-giving traditions. This is a big one this time of year, and it can create a lot of stress for both giver and receiver. There's lots of decisions around cultural and family norms. Who are the gifts coming from? Do we believe in Santa anymore? What are the values around gift giving? And, this is a lot of discussion. If you have a spouse or partner, there's a lot of discussion when families come together, when you bringing your cultural traditions into your new family that you've created. what do you want to keep from your traditions in the past? What do you want to leave behind? How do you want to make new traditions? And sometimes the gift giving is a part of that. I know in my family, we celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas. And so it's always a balancing act of how many gifts and all, what are we doing for Hanukkah versus Christmas? And it can be stressful. So I think one of the major things is to have these conversations with your partner and to figure out what you really want to do. I think a lot of times people are just doing what they've always done, and there's not intentional discussion around, I really love this and we're going to continue doing it. This tradition, I don't know, I don't really feel very, strongly about it. Let's let this one go and move into something new. That's allowed, and it's important if you're really being intentional about creating, your new family values or values that you want to pass along. So tips for gift-giving traditions is that, we want to focus on meaning and really shift from the monetary value to the intention behind the gift. It can be a small, meaningful gift. It doesn't have to be an expensive, large gift. If, that was something that you are accustomed to, and you like, and you can continue doing it, great. But if you really want to check in about what it is, what's the meaning behind it, I think that a lot of times people would rather just get a token of something that's meaningful. And that's even handmade items or, kids writing cards to family members, really focusing on the gratitude and the joy of giving, rather than just getting. So as I said, just to talk a little more about gratitude, modeling appreciation to children for thoughtfulness rather than value is very, very important. And gratitude can be something we practice all year long, but especially during this time of year, you can start now if you haven't, or at the beginning of the month, or even around Thanksgiving, for just as an idea for next year. Talk about what you're grateful for around the dinner table. Talk about who you're grateful for, or something that happened that day that you're grateful for. And it can just be sprinkled into your family life so that kids really understand what gratitude is and how it feels inside themselves. And so when it comes to this gift-giving time of year, they understand how grateful they are to be giving to others and also receiving. We want to also be inclusive. So you could, as an idea, encourage children to make cards or small gifts for extended family. Like maybe you want to put a little love note in a card. So the kid makes the love note and then you wrap the present along with the note, just as a token of meaning. And then the major point that Joe and I have spoken about over and over as we've created this is that we want to really teach our kids that the joy is in giving. And that can come with, bringing the kids along with you to go to have them pick out the gift for people that they love. So that they really see that there's process and thought behind giving the gift, what the person likes and how they're going to use it, and being mindful and that it's meaningful and not. And we all order on Amazon. I know that's easy, right? But sometimes it totally excludes the kids from the process. So you don't have to get all your gifts on Amazon. Perhaps there's a day where you go out with the kids and you actually figure out how you can add more meaning to the gift giving.
Carrie, I love these ideas. And, I took the habit of giving my kids a little cash and making them pick out gifts by themselves. And it had a couple of upsides. And one of them was that they started understanding how to receive a gift, because I think it's hard for kids to know how to receive a gift. Particularly, I think you were talking about this when we were speaking offline about like kids, like, unwrapping something from an aunt and they're like, "Ooh, what is this?" And I think if they've had the experience of picking a gift out, they are much more apt to appreciate the gesture rather than the actual item, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And by the way, my son's girlfriend really appreciates his ability to pick out a gift these days. So, turning them into good husbands. Um, so this happens throughout the year, and it can be particularly difficult over the holidays when we feel excluded or lonely. And social media, like 365 days a year, reminds us what we're not invited to, what we were not included in. And so we can feel very excluded. And when our kids are little, there are a lot more built-in activities at schools and at different events. But as our kids get older, we can find ourselves, feeling on the outside of things that are going on. And our kids may notice that all their friends are at XYZ's house for a holiday party and we were not included. And so there's this comparison that's going on and conversations between peers, and that can amplify these feelings of exclusion. And if you don't have family around or a large extended family, like I don't have any extended family in this country, it can feel like everybody's with their whole family. Maybe that's not such a good thing, but when you're on the other side of it, it can feel a little lonely and a little like you're not involved. So our tips here, and I know you're probably all going to roll your eyes at this first one of plan your own gatherings, but keep it low key. It does not have to be fancy. It can be inviting just a couple of friends round for a cup of hot cocoa and put some Christmas music or Hanukkah, whatever music that represents your holiday on, so that we can just have a sense of connectedness. This is also a wonderful time to reconnect with community resources, volunteering. As Carrie said, the joy is in giving, and in giving of yourself. It can be of your time. And there are lots and lots of opportunities to go volunteer at an old age home or a food kitchen over this time. Places of worship are other good resources for community gatherings. And just look in your local online directories, papers, talk to people in the community. There are lots of opportunities here. But the focus should just be on connection, prioritizing quality time with just a few people that matter, rather than the external validation of I got invited to that party where I knew nobody and didn't really have anything to say anyway. Um, and Carrie was talking about gratitude earlier, and I think that this can be a very helpful way to minimize these feelings of exclusion, is just focus on what they have, and not on what they feel that they're missing out on, and the importance of the key relationships and key friendships that keep them going.
So now we're going to move on to our next point, which is about the importance of rest. And, you know, we hear about rest all the time, and I really wanted to clarify, like, what is rest and how do we do it? Because our, culture says go, go, go. And I don't think many of us really know how to rest. So first of all, what is it? It's really time spent recharging mental and physical batteries that have been depleted by working or doing. And, rest, yes, can be passive and can be quiet and still. But for all you doers out there, there's research that rest also can feel restorative when you're physically moving, like exercise, or you're doing a hobby that brings you joy. These can also be a really great form of restoration.
Carrie, I know that we were talking about this ahead of time, and for years, I love photography, and I use making photo books as my rest. I sit down in front of my computer, I put on a great audio book, and it sort of serves two purposes. I end up being able to give a really meaningful gift to my kids, which is the photo book that comes out of it. But it is and I have no guilt doing it, because I know that that's my downtime, and it is busy. I'm not sitting on the couch, but I really love it, and it sort of gives me the energy to carry on with other activities.
So I think, rest feels indulgent to a lot of us, and especially this time of year, there's so much to get done. And that's why it's actually even more important to rest during this time of year when there's so much pressure to go and do and, get that checklist crossed off. And even in our society, the idea of if you're not doing and not being productive, then, you're not worthy, or you're not doing enough, or, there's all these messages that we've gotten since we were very young that we need to keep going and doing. And our message here is you also need to find time to restore and rest and take care of yourself. And especially during this time with all these stressors that we've spoken about today, we really think it's very important to rest, to take care of yourself, to recharge yourself so that you can have the capacity to do, go to the chorus concert and go pick up your child at the airport and do all the things that this season asks of you. And resting for rest's sake, not just when you're exhausted or sick, but carving out time, even if it's 10 minutes a day, where you just sit down and close your eyes or read a book or call a friend that makes you happy. That can also be rest, or doing a photo book like Joe mentioned before. For a lot of people, rest is very important for your children too, modeling that you are going to sit down and just relax. It's great modeling to show your kids that that's a part of what you do as well as all the other things in your life, but that you value this rest enough that you're going to take the time to do it. And you might even set a boundary and say, I need 10 minutes. Please go out of this room so I can close my eyes. And it may not work, but it also is something that if you continue to set the boundary and sit down for 10 minutes, your body will relax into that time. I think that, redesigning the day may be part of this for some of us, in that if you have not carved out this time to rest, that you may need to say, where is that time that I have? And creating those boundaries, which might mean eliminating distractions, putting your phone in another room, staying off of email, not just scrolling, right? We say at the bottom of this, scrolling is not the rest we're speaking about. That is not part of really restoring ourselves when we're on social media, getting all the messages, of the things we're not doing. That's not helpful in this type of rest. And then this point, rest and leisure creates more time for dreaming and creativity. I just love this. And I think that as a society, we need more time to dream and create. And so why not take the time to rest so that we can actually conjure up things that we want and create new ideas and new expressions of ourselves or things in our lives.
Carrie, I want to just throw in here that I actually think gift wrapping presents the ideal opportunity for rest. In other words, like I section off a closet where I gift wrap, and sometimes I just tell them no one can come in because I'm wrapping a gift, and then I just take the time to listen to a book or rest, and it provides a good excuse to get away from everyone, right?
Yes, that's a great idea.
So talking about not scrolling being the rest, we're not speaking about what do we do about screen time during the holidays? This is such a tricky one, again, year round, but suddenly we have sort of parameters in place during the school year maybe, and then the holidays roll around and kids think, whoa, free for all holidays, I can be on my phone all the time. What do we do about that? And this sounds unrealistic, but coming to an agreement with your kids, involving them in the collaboration on what's reasonable and unreasonable, what are their expectations for the holiday screen time use versus yours, and sort of creating an agreement. But here's the downside. As parents, we have to stick to the agreement too. We have to put parameters on our own screen time use, checking email, scrolling, and being on our phones and devices as much as our kids do, because it really needs to be practice what you preach here. Do as I do, not do as I say. And take an interest if you can't, limit it as much as you want to. it's also really helpful to find out what are your kids looking at on their phones and devices? What games are they playing? I had a parent in my office recently who was so upset that their kid was on Roblox all the time. And I said to them, well, what is Roblox? And they had no idea. So they really were totally unaware of what was drawing their kids into the game. And I had them spend some time exploring, kid explaining to parents what was going on in the game. And it was fascinating because it opened up a whole new avenue of conversation. Suddenly, the kid was still playing the game, but they were having a conversation. Oh, did you get to that level? Did you get the golden chalice or whatever it is that they're so intrigued by in these games? The other thing is to try and, bring the family together around screen time. Carrie was talking about creativity, and what many years ago I was sitting with a lot of downtime, and I had this idea to create a family Jeopardy game that we play around Christmas. I just come up with questions structured in the Jeopardy format, that we can all play and answer in teams during the Christmas holidays. So we sit around the screen playing this Jeopardy game together, but we're connected and engaged rather than all separate in our own, isolated spaces. Um, One of the most important things, and I'm going to shoot back over to Carrie to finish talking about this point, is to give kids warnings when you don't want them to be on their devices anymore. Like if I'm reading an email or an interesting article or watching a TikTok and someone walked in and said, put down your phone right now, I would feel very dysregulated. I would not be happy about that. I'd say, I just want to finish reading the article. And we sort of minimize what our kids are doing on their devices, such that we think they can stop and put it down at any time, or if they're chatting with a friend, interrupt that conversation. But kids really push back against that. So having that warning time, and I'm going to let Carrie talk a little bit more about how this is particularly important with kids who are neurocognitively diverse, neurodevelopmentally diverse.
So one strategy that I talk to clients about with all kids, but kids that have more trouble getting off of screens, which can be an attribute of a neurodivergent child, is that when they are on their screen and they're sucked into their game, and then you come in and say, you got to get off, and they don't listen, and then it becomes a power struggle. A strategy that works well is to actually join them in their game. So if you know that you have to leave the house in 10 minutes or 15 minutes and they're still on their screen, go take 5 minutes, go down there, ask them a few questions, join their world for just a few minutes, and you'll see that they'll be able to transition out of what they're doing in a more easeful way because you've actually engaged into what they're doing. You're not just like ripping the Band-Aid and saying, we got to go, right? Like Joe said, that feels really strange and awkward and uncomfortable. And then the child gets dysregulated. But if you're entering into their world, and you say, hey, buddy, we got to leave in 5 minutes. All right, let's play a little bit more together. And they're playing, and you're maybe asking some questions. And then it's like, oh, 5 minutes is up. Okay, now it's time to go. It actually does make it more easeful because the child feels like you're engaged, that you've seen them, that you're asking questions, that you're interested in what they're doing. And it doesn't take much longer, but it's a strategy that works well.
And then Carrie, I'm going to let you wrap and then share the resources. Just let me know when you want me to jump to the last slide and click on the link.
Sure. So as we've talked so much today about all the stressors and the challenges and tips to navigate this time of year, and we really want to highlight that, connecting with those that you love and taking care of yourself and adapting to the ever-changing thing we call life, whether, whatever phase you're in, that it's important to honor that, and that we want to make sure that this time of year is a time where there's opportunity for connection and growth, and that we stay mindful about being flexible and empathetic towards ourselves as well as those around us as we navigate family dynamics and stress. And we really want to invite you today to think about one new strategy that you could implement this season, one new idea that perhaps this conversation has, sparked for you. We hope that there's one. And Joe, I'm going to pass it back to you just for those additional resources.
Well, it's actually Carrie, you found this one, and oh, I don't know how that happened. I was just going to click on this
Yeah.
one you found that was I thought was so great.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's these wonderful resource that I did in my research, that I found in my research rather, 50 meaningful December traditions for families. This comes from Peaceful Parenting, and we are going to send this out to everybody who's with us today. I think there's just some great ideas to either continue traditions in your family or add some new ones that you find really exciting.
I'm going to stop sharing and then just share one more resource so people can see it a little more clearly. There's a book called The Intentional Family by Bill Doherty. And this book, it's not new, it's a little old, but it has just unbelievable ideas for year-round how to create a more intentional dynamic within your family, to create rituals. And it also addresses the holidays and things that are on people's minds. So we'll share this resource too. I don't know, Carrie, were there any questions? I couldn't see the chat while we were.
Let's see.
Nope, I don't.
No questions. I don't know. Will take a moment for people to type any, if there's any questions that are out there.
Oh,
You're
you're welcome.
welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Struggling with spending too much. I think we're all in that boat, and inflation is definitely hitting us all really hard at the moment. I think paring down on gifts and coming up with family like that Secret Santa, or that you buy for X, I'll buy for Y, can be really helpful.
The other thing that I think comes up around this and spending too much is that there are these unspoken sorts of ways in which families function, like, oh, my husband's cousin's daughter, like all of a sudden I have to buy a gift for her. And really, again, this comes back to, what are my values? What do I want to, how do I want to spend my money, and also show my love and appreciation for my extended family? But I think having a conversation with that cousin and saying, hey, this year, let's have the kids make something for each other, or let's just have them write a card for each other. Or so it takes some courage to have these conversations. But if you're noticing that you're spending too much and that's misaligning with your own values and your own resources, then having that conversation could feel really good in coming to a new agreement with this cousin that may change the path forward for you.
I think that's a great idea. I also think there should be a class in high school called having difficult conversations. If I were president, that's what we'd have, because I think it's hard to upfront those conversations. But saying to a family member, we're just feeling stressed financially this holiday. Would it be okay if? And putting it out there, and I think you would find the response very different from what you might imagine, because I think they would be relieved, and I think that they might be in the same boat, particularly currently.
Yeah, Kate, just to respond to you, I think that that's really the number one place to start, is to just have those conversations with your family that you live with, and make sure that you're all on the same page, express how you're feeling to them and how they're feeling, and getting on board with each other makes it feel like a collective force that then you can go and say, this is what we're doing as a unit. And so it doesn't feel like you're alone in it, that you have people that feel the same way, and that, that you love and trust in it with you.
Kate, one more idea for you. And this is something I started with my kids a long time ago that went hand in hand with that photo book, which may be too much work right now. But I started writing them a letter, and I kept it really simple. I wrote things you loved this year and things you hated this year, or highlights and lowlights of this year. And I would just write out like in bullet point format, and I made it kind of amusing, and I didn't sugarcoat it, but I sort of outlined the funny things that had happened this year, and I would give it to my kids as a Christmas gift. And I will tell you that it is the thing they look forward to getting each year, not the material things. So sometimes those sentimental things can mean more than, the big gift.
Ben,
Carrie,
this
you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. It's a big question, I think, that a lot of us have this year, going into extended family time. And I think there are different ways to handle it for sure, depending on who you are and what type of relationship you have with the person that may have different political views than you. If that's what you're referring to, if they're different political views, I would go in with a lot of curiosity. I think curiosity is a great way to kind of put away the defenses and just ask. I'm really curious, tell me about your views. I'd want to understand who you are better. We have these sort of preconceived notions of, oh, if you voted for this one, you're like this. If you voted for this one, you're like that. And really, there's so much more underneath it. So going in with curiosity, if you feel like you have capacity to have a brave conversation like that. But most of the time, curiosity does not bring up defense. So I like that idea. The other idea I would say is that if you know that this uncle is going to start talking about politics, and it's going to really make you crazy in a sense, but you have to be around that person, then I think that's a time to use those boundaries and take those breaks and make sure you're taking care of yourself so that, the toxicity that you're feeling is not necessarily like seeping into you, and you can take care of yourself by spending time away from that particular family member, or, spending time with people that are going to make you happy on the holiday.
And I think if all else fails, just saying kindly, I'm finding this conversation really difficult. I know we have different views here, and I would just like to table this for a different time and enjoy the holidays can also work wonders if all else fails. Carrie's suggestions are better.
No. All right. Any other last questions before we wrap?
No.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for attending today, and happy holidays. And Joe, it was wonderful doing this with you.
So fun, Carrie. And thanks, as Carrie said, thank you for joining us, and keep that stress level low. No guilt, people. All right.